What's up? It's Jen. Welcome back to my channel. We're doing something a little bit different today. I recently watched Carrie Can Read her why is that so hard for me to say? She did a video with a book tag, and I've been wanting to make a video kind of like this for a while, just talking about the books that kind of made me who I am, essentially. And she kind of did this like, where did my lore start, which is kind of the same thing, I think. I have a crochet project with me. If you are not new to this channel, you probably know that I have a tendency to ramble, so I'm hoping that if I kind of work on something while I'm talking, maybe we can keep that down a little bit. So I'm gonna jump in with the first tag question and go from there. So the first question that she came up with is the first book you remember reading by yourself. I don't specifically remember like the first book. I've kind of always been a reader, which I will talk about more with one of the other questions, but some of the early ones that I remember reading were like Magic Tree House books. I was really into the A to Z mystery series. I think one of my favorite teachers was my 4th grade teacher, and she had like a little library section of her classroom with like beanbag chairs and stuff. And I remember picking up the first one of those and loving it, and I always like got my hands on them, and I was into collecting those books. So I think I was in high school by the time the last letters of the alphabet came out. Like it's A to Z, so each one is like an alliteration for a letter of the alphabet. There's 26 books. So I have vivid memories of one year when I was in high school, and I grew up in Missouri, so in the middle of winter when it was really cold, the power went out one time, and I was snuggled up in my bed under the blankets wearing gloves and a hat, reading these books that when you're a teenager, a children's book like that takes like a half an hour to read, but I was trying to kill time by reading the last few A to Z mystery books that I bought. So that's a huge one. And another one that I feel like can fly under the radar is Encyclopedia Brown. I think I remember picking those up because my last name's Brown, and so I was like, hey. But they're like little detective books where there's a short situation and you're supposed to try to figure out the answer. And this kid, his nickname is Encyclopedia, because he's like really smart, and he's supposed to be kind of like a child version of like Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. And then in the back of the book, there's like the answer and the explanation. I don't think I ever figured any of them out before going to the explanation. I remember one time there was one where he knew the police officer they were talking to wasn't real because like his badge was on the wrong side or something, and I was like, why would I know what side a police officer's badge is on? But they were still really interesting and cool, and that's something that I don't feel the need to collect the whole series, but I do want to find like the original covers of those and maybe get a couple. I need to count. I realized I need to count my chain before we move on, so give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. So the next one is, what character did you identify the most with in elementary school? My biggest one would have to be Ruth Rose. She's the girl in the trio from A to Z Mysteries. She's always like, they kind of had that sort of stereotypical, like, there's the shy but like smart kid, and then his sort of like goofy friend, and then the girl who hangs out with them and then is kind of like the most logical sometimes. But I always thought she was really cool, and one of my favorite things about her that I was always really desperate to do when I was a kid is she dressed head to toe in the same color. So like in each book, if it took place over multiple days, it would be different outfits, but like when you see her on the cover of each book, like she's wearing like whatever's in her hair, whatever her outfit is, her socks, her shoes, they're all matching. And for some reason, I really aspired to that when I was a kid. And anytime I do sort of like a monochromatic look, I'm just like, I'm being Ruth Rose today. So yeah, I definitely identified with her the most. Also, I really loved the Chronicles of Narnia books growing up, and I especially early on identified with Lucy. She's the littlest sister that like finds the wardrobe in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And just, I've always loved things that are whimsical, and loved fantasy, and so I probably felt misunderstood as the youngest sibling a couple times too, and so yeah, I really identified with Lucy as well. The next question, I think a lot of these are about elementary school, but some of them like bump up a little bit. But the next question is, what was your comfort book? I already mentioned Chronicles of Narnia, definitely. I do also have to mention Harry Potter, and please keep in mind, I'm 33, so I was growing up in like elementary and middle school when these books were coming out, and this was before we knew that the author has some really horrible takes on things. And as an adult, I have sort of decided that I'm not gonna let her take my love of those stories from me. I don't support her anymore. I have copies of the books that I've had for ages and ages that I will occasionally reread because those stories were really formative to me growing up. But that's my piece. Hopefully you understand what I mean by that. But those stories really helped boost my love of writing too. I don't talk about it a lot on here, but I do write fantasy as well. I've been working on like a YA fantasy trilogy for a really long time. I finished the manuscript of the first one during the lockdowns for COVID, and I'm like a chunk of the way through the second one, but it takes a really long time. But I can't leave those out of books that formed my love of writing, and just, I don't know, those were the first books that were long that I felt like I could really get lost in. I would like come home from school and we had a tire swing on one of our trees. My parents have like a really big yard. The house is kind of up on a hill, and then the yard is like really huge down to the road, and I would sit on the tire swing for hours and read those books. And we also had a crabapple tree that was all kind of like, those trees are like shorter and the branches are like long and thick, and I would climb up to the branches I could reach. There were a couple like designated sitting spots after school and just sit in the tree and read Harry Potter. And yeah, that I could talk about that forever, but I won't. But yeah, so those were definitely my go-to comfort books. Oh, my last one, I got off on too far of a tangent. The Magic Attic Club. I know quite a few people have talked about like their love of Magic Tree House, which I also agree with. Those were always my go-to for book reports in school when you had to do historical fiction, because I was not a fan of that as a kid. It's still not my favorite, but if we had to do historical fiction, I was like, Magic Tree House, let's go. But the Magic Attic Club is like about a group of friends who find like in someone's grandma's attic or something, like a chest of drawers full of like, or a trunk full of costumes and like a mirror, and they put on these outfits and they're like transported to whatever's going on, whether it's like historical or just like another type of life. There's historical ones, I think, there's like sports ones, like all cool stuff. And then like the American Girls, like each girl has her own set of books. And we also again, keeping in mind my age, while we did have the internet, it was very different than it is now, and so that was not really a source of entertainment for us until like late middle school and high school. But we also like the American Girls. They came with dolls, or you could get dolls that were also very expensive, but we would get catalogs in the mail that would show like all the details of the outfits that matched with the book, and I kept those magazines for years because I just liked, like, I can't, if I can find some photos, I will put them in. Like, it wasn't just an advertisement for a doll, it was like an entire scene set up that were really, really cool and I loved. So I will try to see if I can find some old photos of those online or something, but I would look at the magazines of the dolls like it was a book. And I kept those for years, but I just loved to look at those and look at all the like costuming and the outfits and stuff. All right, moving on. Number 4 is, did your school inspire you to read? And how did your upbringing encourage it? My answer is definitely yes. We did scholastic book fairs. I actually just was talking with my students the other day. I teach at community college, about how we wish that they would do scholastic book fairs for colleges because we all really missed those. But we also did various like reading programs. The one that we did the most, I think, was called DEAR, which is like an acronym for Drop Everything and Read, and it would be like 15 minutes in the afternoon, and they would say it over the loudspeaker, and whatever class you were in, whatever, you had to stop what you're doing and have a book with you, or get one from your teacher and read. And I loved that because A, you got to miss out on 15 minutes of your class and you got to read a book. We also had something called the Bookmobile that we did with one of our local libraries. I don't know if it was just a local thing, or if that was like a wider spread program, but there was a woman who, she wasn't mean, she was just kind of gruff and intimidating, but she drove this like little boxy van, kind of like the short school bus sizes, with a mobile library. Like, you weren't allowed, at least the way we did it at my school, you weren't allowed to stay in there, but each classroom she would come like once a month or every 2 months or something, and the classes would like delegate students to get to go to the Bookmobile and pick out books for your classes to check out. I also, the second part of this question, for how did your upbringing encourage it? Like I said, I've always been a reader, and that is a huge part because of my parents and my mom, especially. When my sister is 3.5 years older than me, and when we were little, like, she would read with us before bed, but she wouldn't just read us a book. She would like have us imagine different scenarios. Like, it was so long ago, it's hard for me to think of specifics, but like I kind of remember her like asking us essentially like critical thinking questions about, like, you know, why one of my favorites was this one called Scaredy Cat Kitten, and you know, she'd be like, well, why do you think the cat is scared? Or like, why do you think this bear wants to put on this outfit today? Like, just little things that would like get us more engaged with it. And then something that I will always cherish, it's very sweet and cheesy, but what actually started getting me into Harry Potter and a lot of the books that I love is, one year we took family vacation every summer, and one year I think I had finished reading all the books I brought with us, and my sister was reading some of the series of Unfortunate Events and also whatever Harry Potter book, and she started reading them to me because I was bored, and she was like, I'm reading these books, and she started reading them to me, and I loved them. And that is also why my dad, just driving the car, was listening, and he kind of liked the Harry Potter stories, and so he eventually read them all too. But that kind of became our thing. And she had books that she would like show me that she really liked, and so instead of me just reading them, she would read them to me, and that was just like our thing we did most nights before bed. And then as we got older, when the new Harry Potter books or whatever would come out, our parents would only want to buy one copy, and so she would read it to me so we could like not have to fight over who was reading it. And I still remember she came home from college when the last Harry Potter book came out. I was 16 then, I guess. But she came home from college. We both got copies. We went to Walmart at midnight to get our copies of the books. And then she started reading the last book to me for as long as we could stay awake. And then she had to go home the next day. And she only went to college like a few hours away, but she had to go home the next day. And so then we both separately finished reading. But when I would babysit my younger cousins, sometimes I would read those books to them. And so it kind of like just became this tradition. It was really fun, and that will always be like really special to me. All right, the next question is your favorite formative YA books. So I'm trying to get out of the elementary school. Some of the books, like the first ones I thought of for this question, are some of the books that my sister read to me. I still have copies of them today, and that is the Turtle series by Tamara Pierce. It's hard to call it a series because there's so many books. They're like these little mini, the first ones are like quartets, so they're sets of 4 books, and then the last few are like duologies. Well, no, one of them's a trilogy, but they're all set in the same world. But any of the books that have to do with that, specifically, if you know what I'm talking about, the Song of the Lioness Quartet and the Immortals Quartet were my favorite. They were written, I think, in like the 80s and 90s, so there's definitely some problematic age gaps that happen. But part of me doesn't care because I luckily understood at the time that they're written like, they're like medieval adjacent fantasy, and I know that's kind of a way to just explain away that like, oh, you know, back then that would be totally normal. But I don't know, I was always able to like kind of see around it, and then when I got older I was like, okay, well in the real world that's not how that should go. But I can't help it, I love it. There's, again, that was another huge one that like really helped fuel my writing. The world building and just like the magic system that's unique, and just all the characters. I think obviously the rest of them all are included in that, but that is the big like standout for me. I have reread those I don't know how many times. A book you had to read for school but loved. I do have a few of these. There is it over here? I forgot to look up the author for this when I was making notes last night. There's a book that is like the book that was taught in schools on mythology. I want to say it's Edith Hamilton. Ah, oh yes, it is in frame. It's right here. I was right. Edith Hamilton's Mythology. We studied that book in high school, and then I took a mythology class in college too, and it was the same book, and it is just Greek mythology, I believe. I found it fascinating. All of the stories I really liked. I think in 7th grade English class we read the play Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. That's what the movie My Fair Lady is based on. I actually really liked that. I think that same year we read Lord of the Flies. Loved that one. I liked reading The Crucible in high school. And also the book Stargirl. I actually was so inspired by that one that I wrote my first ever little like novella when I was 13. it has nothing to do with Stargirl, it just inspired me, but I think I have it somewhere. It's very 13-year-old girl story, but I was still really proud of it. I was like writing it in notebooks, and like my friends were reading it as I was finishing and stuff, and it was really fun. Second to last question is your weirdest favorite book, and I couldn't really think of anything like a specific title for this, but what I could think of, there are two books that I read when I was in grade school that I liked. They were definitely bizarre, and I can't remember what they are, and I think I probably read them in like 5th or 6th grade. And I went to like a full grade school, so it was K through 8 all in the same school. And I remember in like 8th grade going and scouring the library for like our school library for one of them, because I wanted to find it back, because I wanted to remember the title to like see if I could find it. And I have periodically, I just think about these two books, and it's like I don't even remember enough of the plot to be able to Google it. I don't know. I don't know. I hate it so much, but I can't even think of enough words to like make a coherent statement about them. The other one that I was trying to find was like a girl who could see ghosts or something, and like she was like out, there's like a scene where she's like out in a field and she's like staying with strangers for some reason, and she can like, I don't know, see ghosts is the best thing I can think of. I don't know. I'm gonna move on because I'm just literally saying nonsense things. But if that sounds vaguely familiar to you, please let me know if it reminds you of any books, because I'm constantly searching and reading plot descriptions for anything to see if it'll jog my memory. I do kind of remember what both of the covers look like, so I feel like if I see it again, I won't know it. But anyway. The last question that I was going to do from Carrie's tag is, what's a new book, like a contemporary book, that you wish you had when you were younger? And I am using this as an excuse to talk about The Scarlet Veil, which I just finished reading, and it's currently like towards the end of March when I'm recording this. I think I finished reading that book like a week or two ago, and I was like, oh my god, is there a sequel? And I looked it up and saw that the sequel called The Shadow Bride comes out, I think like today or tomorrow, so I pre-ordered it so I can finish it. But it is, I'm gonna talk about it more in my in May. I'll be doing my quarterly like book review, but I didn't know about the Serpent and Dove trilogy. So I started reading this book and I was like, is this in the middle of a series? Like, you don't have to read those first. They do end up giving you enough information. It will definitely spoil stuff for you. But, so now I'm going back and listening to the audiobooks of Serpent and Dove while I wait for The Shadow Bride to come out. But I just like, I was reading the ebook of Scarlet Veil and I just like ate it up. Like, that is what high school me, I would have been like so obsessive over it. I love everything about it. It's such good, solid fantasy. There's romance, but not too much. Like, the plot is super interesting as well. Very interesting like magic system. That's something I always look for in fantasy, is because I feel like it's hard to be unique with a magic system. I'm actually kind of glad I read it first, because now that I'm going back and listening to the other books in the original trilogy, like the main character of the Scarlet Veil, at first they kind of make her seem sort of like pathetic and weak and whiny. And you get to see, I'm in the last of the trilogy called Gods and Monsters, and so things are kind of like turning around. You get to see her journey of like becoming the person she is in Scarlet Veil, but I was just kind of like, what? Like, what's going on? So it's basically like you get to learn the background of her story and all of her friends. So it's pretty cool, and I've really been enjoying it, and it definitely has made me feel inspired to start writing again. As any of you know, if you're in school or work a job, whatever kind of writing you might like to do, it is really difficult to keep up with life, and I feel like it's inspiring me to kind of start working on my writing again. So did pretty decent. I'm making some tiny solid granny squares for a project, and we got about halfway through this one, so not too bad. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up before this gets any longer. This was really fun. Even though I'm not like a booktuber, I really like talking about books and reading and writing, and I really am grateful that Carrie did this tag because it gave me kind of a push to do it. So if anyone wants to share in the comments your thoughts on any of these books or books that you like to read when you were growing up, I would love to hear about it. If you like this video and you want to see more from me, feel free to subscribe. I post videos 2 to 3 times a month. I do like crochet content, some like quarterly book content, art, crafting, all the stuff. Thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you next time.